During training, what does your horse most enjoy? What really makes them engage in the training? And what motivates them the most to want to work with you and to want to learn? When we know what really motivates our horse, and when we can understand the idea of different levels of positive reinforcement, we can be much more effective in using reward-based training. I'm Callie. This is CRK Training. This is my weekly video show where I talk about riding advice, training ideas, and we talk about horse care. Today we're focusing on the idea of how to better use positive reinforcement with your horse. And I want to start by just defining this term because I think sometimes it's misunderstood. So positive reinforcement, by definition, is giving the horse something that he values after a behavior. So an easy example would be if we're wanting the horse to go on the trailer and he takes the first step on the ramp, we give him a little bit of food. And then he takes the next step, we give him a little bit more food. The key to anything truly being positive reinforcement is that the horse has to actually value the reward. The more that he values the reward, the more motivation it's going to provide for him wanting to figure out what it is that you are asking for. So there was a really interesting study done at the University of Rennes in France. And what the researchers did is they took 30 yearlings and they divided them into 3 different groups. So they had one group that was getting food rewards, they had a second group that was just getting wither scratching as the reward, and then they had another group that didn't get any kind of reward. And they were teaching them a simple task. They were just teaching them to stand still for 60 seconds. And basically they compared the length of time that it took for the horse to learn the task and also the amount of engagement with the trainer. So how much was the horse looking at the trainer, how much were they directing their ears towards them, and how much were they actually turning their necks around to look. Not surprisingly, the horses that were actually getting a food reward did the best. So they stayed the most engaged and they also learned that task the easiest. So to me, what this tells us is not that we have to use food to train everything. It does tell us that food's can be a very powerful motivator for horses to learn, and it obviously in this instant can increase the speed of the learning. But I think what's most important to recognize is that whenever we are doing something that we intend to be a positive reinforcement, a reward for the horse, we have to make sure that it actually matters to them. So for example, if we're using scratching, it's worth it to take some extra time and think about the areas that the horse most enjoys being scratched. So does he really like his withers scratched, or does he have a spot like right along his neck that he really gets into and enjoys? Because when we can know what he enjoys most and what he's going to work for most, it's just going to be more effective as a reinforcement, as a reward. An important tip to remember when you are using any kind of touch or scratching with your horse is just to be careful not to confuse what's reinforcing for you with what is reinforcing for your horse. So what that means is sometimes we love to touch and we love to love on our horses, but you have to pay attention to the horse's reaction. Because if by giving them a big pat on the neck or a vigorous scratch, if that particular horse actually shows little signs of pulling back or of getting tense as you do those things, it's not a positive reinforcement for them. In fact, it could actually be the opposite because it's something that for that horse, they're not enjoying it. So it all comes back to whenever you want to be rewarding your horse, make sure that whatever the reward is that you're doing, whether it's food, whether it's touch and scratching, that you are that you're sure that the horse really values that reward and that it's something that they want and that they enjoy so that it can truly be a reinforcement in your training. And the second tip is to consider how there's different levels. So while scratching might be slightly rewarding and maybe a handful of alfalfa pellets is above that, And then sweet feed is even above that, and perhaps a carrot is at the top. So this is something that's often used in training dogs, is having, even within using food, there's different levels. So dogs, you kind of figure out what the dog's preference is, and then depending on the difficulty of the behavior, or if you want to give what's called a jackpot reward, which is like that extra special big reward, you give them what they really, really like. But for more of kind of the normal, more easy to perform behaviors, you give them a lesser reward. And we can use the same concept with our horses. So maybe you keep a few treats and you save them for those big, important behaviors you've been working on, like standing still at the mounting block or going past the scary corner of the arena. And then you use some wither scratching throughout the rest of your ride or your session with your horse to be still giving a positive reinforcement, but on a much lesser level. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear from you. So I want you to go ahead and put in the comments a positive reinforcement that you have used for your horse and what the situation is that you used it in. So I look forward to seeing your comments. If you're watching this anywhere besides my website at crktrainingblog.com, that's where the best conversation happens. That's where I'll be reading the comments. And we've got tons of other resources for you there, as well as a free 7-day short course that I'll link down below the video here, 7 days to understanding your horse. So if you're interested in this science of training and you want to learn a little bit more, that's a great resource to get started in. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time in our videos.